Okay, so this is wild. But what if the biggest XRP trades on Earth are happening right now, behind a locked door that you and I can't see? And what if I told you the truth is both less scandalous and way more important for XRP's future than any $1,000 secret price tag? So picture this. I'm scrolling through crypto Twitter at 2 a.m. when I stumble upon another secret XRP ledger thread. Now, you've seen the post, right? Moon rocket emojis, talk of banks swapping XRP for $1,000 a pop, while the rest of us kind of wait outside like kids barred from the candy store. Now, my first reaction, come on, not this rabbit hole again. But then I noticed the tweets coming from All Things XRP, a guy who usually actually sticks to facts. He's actually insisting this hidden ledger isn't a fringe conspiracy. It's actually straight up documented. Now, my skeptic meter is blinking, but curiosity always wins. So I dive in, coffee in hand, dog staring at me for attention that I'm obviously not going to be giving him. Turns out, back in 2021, Ripple announced something called the CBDC private ledger. So think of it as the VIP room for the XRP ledger then. Same music, fancier dress code, and bouncers wearing central bank badges. Now, it's a completely closed version of the public chain, purpose-built so that governments can tinker with digital currencies without the whole planet peeking over their shoulders. Now, Ripple's own blog says that it delivers the same lightning-fast settlements as the public ledger, just wrapped in industry strength, privacy, and compliance layers. In other words, if you're a nation's treasury, you get the speed of XRP without broadcasting every transaction to Reddit. Now, here is where the rumor morphs into telephone game legend, right? Some folks heard private ledger and leap to private price, imagining banks secretly shilling out 4 figures per token. Now, one ex-London fund manager even spun tales that the two ledgers could maybe one day merge one glorious day, rocketing public XRP to match the elite price. Now, you can practically see the green candles in his eyes, right? But the trouble is, Ripple's CTO, David Schwartz, has swatted that idea down many more times than I've hit the snooze button on my alarm. So here's the direct quote. There's no dual pricing mechanism, and the private ledger does not use XRP at all. So let's think about that for a sec. Right? If the closed system doesn't run on XRP in the first place, why would banks pay extra for a token that they don't need? It's kind of like you'd be ordering a $1,000 pizza slice when your kitchen's already got a kind of full pie for a tenner. Right? Institutions might do the same odd things, or do some pretty odd things, I should say, but lighting money on fire for fun isn't really one of them. Now, All Things XRP basically says the same. Yes, a private ledger, it exists, but no, there's no secret marketplace where bankers swim in kind of Scrooge McDuck faults of overpriced XRP. But let's take a step back and ask the juicier question. Why does this matter to regular holders like you and me? Well, here's another angle, or the angle, I guess, that almost everyone misses, right? The existence of that private ledger is huge validation for Ripple's technology. Central banks, they don't pick random blockchains out of a hat, right? They run endless due diligence. Now, the fact that Ripple kind of persuaded them to test CBDCs on a fork of its own software, it tells us that the core engine is battle ready. Now, that's like getting Ferrari to kind of blueprint engines for NASA. It kind of quietly shouts, this machine can handle serious mileage. Now, it might not pump the price overnight, but it kind of lays the asphalt for highways of future adoption. Now, of course, the narrative clash creates a bit of a headache, right? On one side, you've got conspiracy-flavored hopium, right? Banks are buying, at $1,000, just wait. right? And on the other side, you've got stone cold reality, right? Nope, they're not even buying XRP in that environment. So the challenge is keeping the community fired up without kind of drifting into fantasy land, right? If you've kind of hung around XRP chat rooms, you know the arguments can get pretty spicy. Now, every time that the price stalls under $1 or under $2, whispers of secret trades bubble up like clockwork, right? It's all comfort food for bruised egos. Now, I get it. I get the temptation, right? Nobody likes staring at a portfolio that looks more sideways than a crab walk, right? Believing there's a hidden premium that can kind of soften the sting a little bit. But it also kind of distracts us from what's really unfolding here, right? Ripple is positioning itself as a backbone for state-leveled digital money, right? That's a slow burn storyline, not a Hollywood jump cut, right? Now, just imagine, right, building a smart city, right, laying fiber cables, negotiating with governments, rolling out pilot programs. That stuff takes years, right? You can't just microwave it. Okay, so let's unpack the nuts and the bolts of this private ledger then, right? According to Ripple's briefing sheet, it supports 10,000 transactions per second right out of the gate and can scale to a draw-dropping 100,000 with sharding. It's energy efficient too, so think LED light bulb versus power-sucking floodlight. Now, for central banks juggling millions of wallets, that kind of efficiency is gold, right? And because the ledger is isolated, regulators get to kind of set their own rules without interfering with the public network. Now, in plain English, they can flip whatever switches they need without asking for global XRP community for permission. But here is the killer feature. It's interoperability. Now, Ripple didn't lock the private ledger in a kind of dungeon, right? It built a doorway. Now, when a central bank digital currency needs to interact with another system, the rails are there, right? That's where the public XRP may actually come in later as a bridge asset, greasing the FX transfers between siloed CBDCs. And if that materializes, well, demand for XRP could spike from pure utility instead of speculative hysteria. Okay, so let me share a very quick mental image. Picture the global payments landscape as an airport. Right now, flights are delayed, gates are scattered, and luggage somehow ends up, in a completely wrong place. Now, Ripple is basically installing moving walkways and automated baggage belts. Now, you might not notice the upgrades at first, but suddenly bags arrive on time and flight transfers, well, they feel painless. And that's kind of the bet here, right? Quietly fixing rails is less sexy than claiming XRP to $1,000 tomorrow, yet it's the stuff that sticks long term. Now, let's get back to the rumor mill then, because why do these theories keep resurfacing? Partly, it's actually because humans love secrets, right? They make us feel, chosen. To tell someone there's a hidden room in a museum and to watch them kind of spend hours hunting for that invisible door. Right, crypto's no different here, right? A confidential ledger, it sounds exotic, right? And banks moving billions of dollars, it adds to that kind of Wall Street mystique, right? Sprinkle in the frustration of sluggish prices and voila, right? Urban legend deluxe. But there's an economic reality that is smacking that myth in the face. Arbitrage. If XRP really traded at $1,000 in one venue and 60 cents, let's say, on Binance, well, traders would fling themselves at that spread faster than you can say interledger, right? Bots would buy cheap, sell high, and the gap would collapse overnight. Markets might be messy, but they hate free lunches. Now, in finance, the minute that someone leaves a $20 bill on the sidewalk, it disappears before most of us even notice. And let's not forget David Schwartz's final nail in the coffin. The private ledger doesn't hold XRP, period. Now, that's like discovering the secret wine cellar has 0 wine bottles, right? Pretty hard to auction that you don't actually have the stock. And better yet, Ripple actually published documentation, right? If it were truly kind of hush-hush, Well, you wouldn't find it on their public site. Now, the fact that the PDF sits there for anyone to read is the kind of, epitome of kind of transparency, if you will. Now, it's kind of almost hilarious that something so openly kind of referenced still fuels kind of a cloak and dagger narrative. All right, so here's the part where I will admit my own bias here, right? I do hold XRP. My bags aren't life-changing, but they're enough to make me double take at news like this. Now, when I first saw those $1,000 rumors years ago, a tiny part of me wanted to believe, right? Who wouldn't wish for instant millionaire status, right? Then I kind of ran the math, I read the official statements and realized I'd rather pin my hopes on real adoption than ghost stories. And if that kind of sounds like you, then we're in the same boat, paddling towards the same horizon. And speaking of boats, let's steer towards the bigger picture for a second. Central banks across the world, from Sweden to the Bahamas, are kind of knee-deep in CBDC trials. Even the UAE, right in our own neighborhood down here, is chasing cross-border settlements using tokenized dirhams. Like, the rails that they pick today will shape finance for decades to come. Now, Ripple's shot at being part of those rails is kind of like early TCP/IP, right? Getting adopted by universities before the internet really exploded. It was nothing flashy at first glance, but fundamental once the network effect actually kicks in. And here is where I find the genuine excitement. Right? If Ripple's technology becomes the kind of dial tone of digital currency, well, always kind of humming in the background, well, public XRP could become the quarters that we feed into the payphone. Yeah, I know the metaphors are dated, right? But you kind of get the gist. Utility gives value staying power. Right? It may not be glamorous or meme-worthy, but it is sustainable. And frankly, I'll take kind of boring reliability over sugar-rushed hype any day. Now, if you are wondering how you can keep tabs on all of the developments without drowning in Twitter hot takes, hop into our free crypto Discord server. There's a link sitting right there in the description down below. Now, we break down stuff like this in real time, minus of course the echo chamber of drama, plus the occasional bad joke here or there or chart memes, right? It's a chilled out corner of the internet where skepticism and optimism play nice together. Okay then, so it's time for the crescendo, right? Imagine the moment years from now where two central banks settle billions in CBDCs across Ripple's network. The headlines barely blink because it's become standard, right? That's the real secret ledger twist, right? It won't stay a secret. It will become invisible infrastructure, the plumbing that nobody actually brags about until it actually clogs, right? And if XRP gets drafted as the kind of neutral currency that bridging those kind of walled kind of gardens together, well, demand, it won't actually need fairy tales, right? It will kind of ride on transactional volume, like the gasoline in the pipeline. So let's shut the door on the dual price fiction, right? Banks aren't paying Lamborghini money for tokens that you can swap on an exchange for pocket change, right? They're using a custom ledger to play with digital cash in a sandbox built by Ripple. That sandbox proves the architecture works, keeps regulators happy, and sets the stage for wider adoption. For us retail holders, the signal is quite simple, right? Track utility, partnerships, and regulatory clarity, not whispers of $1,000 backroom deals. So here's a quick recap before we wrap up today. Ripple's CBDC private ledger is in fact real. It's well documented and deliberately cut off from the public XRP. No XRP trades happen there, which means there's no secret high price. The upside is Ripple's technology is rubbing shoulders with central banks, boosting credibility for future use cases, and that potentially could drive genuine demand later. So next time that somebody drops the $1,000 rumor in your group chat, feel free to share this little reality check, politely of course, but nonetheless, a reality check it is.